I can still remember the message I taught the Sunday after 9/11. And there was a expectancy. There was a, what's the word I want to use? There was just a spirit, and I don't mean in a spiritual way, but a spirit in an attitude of people. It was very different on September 12th, wasn't it? I remember spending all day, I was in a training when somebody said, "Hey, a plane just ran into the tower there in New York." And I'm thinking, oh, this is a horrible, just a horrible tragedy. And then as the day unfolds, it's, no, wait a minute, this was purposeful. No, wait a minute. We have people at my job that came in every week. They flew in for the job during the week and then would fly out on Thursday. They were all stuck in Pittsburgh. They were all, waiting to get out and couldn't. So started renting cars like crazy until nobody had cars for rent anymore because all the people that had been in planes had. But that Sunday morning, and for days, for weeks after that, there was a certain awareness that people had that, wait a minute, we're not so safe as we thought we were. We need to look beyond this bubble of America, this bubble of living in this world, and look for some meaning somewhere else. Krista has been used as an evangelist quite often in the Giant Eagle in our neighborhood. Not as much lately for some reason. Maybe because she goes to Costco more than Giant Eagle, I don't know. But during that time, she was standing in line at the Giant Eagle, and there's 10 different lanes, and people are waiting to pay for their stuff. And she's standing in one line, and about 4 lines over, there's a woman who we knew from the neighborhood and knew that we were Christians. And the woman yells over to Krista. She was not a Christian herself, but she yells over to Krista. And she says, "Hey, Krista, do you think Jesus is coming soon?" And so everybody in the Giant Eagle is like... And Krista yells out and says, "I don't know, but you better be ready." And everyone in the Giant Eagle heard it. People were listening. People were looking. A year later, here we are, how many years later? And now we're deconstructing all of the things, whether they were right or whether they were wrong. That's not what I'm speaking about, but we're deconstructing what happened then, and the nation as a whole has just settled back into this idea of, hey, everything's okay. It's awareness. People were crying out to God during that time, looking for some meaning to life, looking for protection, looking for help and meaning. Now they're looking for, what do I do about my 401k losing so much money? Where am I going to get my job? We got to get a political movement going to get the economy going. We got to do this. We got to regulate. We got to not regulate. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to call on Jesus. That's what we need to do. True success doesn't condone sin. Jehoahaz and his followers fell into the idea of, hey, we prayed, God answered, so I guess he doesn't care that we're doing all this other stuff. Oh, yes, he does. Oh, yes, he does. Second guy, Jehoahash. I like Jehoahaz better, but it's up to you guys, Think about it. 2 Kings 13, starting to read at verse 10. In the 27th year of Joash, king of Judah, Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, became king over Israel and Samaria and reigned 16 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, but walked in them. Now the rest of his acts, all that he did, his might with which he fought against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Israel? So Joash rested with his fathers. Then Jeroboam sat in his throne, and Joash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Elisha had become sick with the illness of which he would die. Then Joash, the king of Israel, came down to him and wept over his face and said, "Oh, my father, the chariots of Israel and their horsemen." And Elisha said to him, "Take a bow and some arrows." So he took himself a bow and some arrows. And then he said to the king of Israel, "Put your hand on the bow." So he put his hand on it. And Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. And he said, "Open the east window." And he opened it. Then Elisha said, "Shoot." And he shot. And he said, "The arrow of the Lord's deliverance, and the arrow of the deliverance from Syria. For you must strike the Syrians at Aphek till you have destroyed them." And then he said, "Take the arrows." So he took them. And he said to the king of Israel, "Strike the ground," or aim toward the ground now. And so he struck 3 times and stopped. And the man of God was angry with him, and he said, "You should have struck 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck Syria till you had destroyed it. But now you will strike Syria only 3 times. And then Elisha died, and they buried him. And it goes on with a little strange story about the marauding bands from Moab used to come by, and this group was coming by, and they needed to bury somebody, and then they were being attacked, so they dropped this guy down into Elisha's tomb, and the guy came back to life. Wouldn't you be surprised? Go to bury somebody and they come back to life. But we want to focus on Jehoash. And the idea here is that true success requires stepping out. True success requires stepping out. You see, the problem was, he followed in the sins of Jeroboam, and yet, when he went to visit Elisha as Elisha was dying, he looked at him and said, "Oh, the chariots of God. My father, the chariots of Israel and their horsemen." You remember Elisha had given information to the king of Israel, not this king, but previous king, to let him know exactly when Syria was coming. He recognized that through Elisha, God's power was coming and was helping Israel. So he said, "Oh, what am I going to do now? My father. Somehow there was some goodness in him that if he had turned to God, if he had listened to what Elisha had to say to him, well, God could have done an amazing work in him, and perhaps the first of the kings of Israel that would follow the true God we would see in this man. And yet, didn't happen. Jehoash. He gives him arrows and says, "Okay, open the window and shoot an arrow out." Wouldn't that be interesting to just be walking around the town and just, shoo? Wonder what the king's doing. Wonder if he was aiming that at me. And the first one, to show that God will bring you deliverance. He shot it to the east. He shot it towards his enemies. Deliverance. And he says, "Okay, now take all these arrows and shoot the ground." But it only takes 3. Now, this is a very brief story. We don't get all of the information here, but obviously, Elisha must have said something more to this man for Elisha then to become angry because he didn't shoot all the arrows down there. I mean, maybe he was trying to save some of the arrows. It's good arrows. You don't want to be without any arrows. Who knows what he was thinking? But obviously, Elisha had said more to him. Because Elisha was justified in saying, "You have not shown faith. You only shot 3 arrows, and so you will only have 3 victories." And history tells us that that's what happened. He was only willing to go so far. How far are you willing to go for your Lord? How far are you willing to go? How far was God willing to go for you? Now, how far are you willing to go for him? Well, I'm willing to put up with listening to Pastor Kevin for 45 minutes. I'm willing to put in a couple hours on Sunday morning. God doesn't want your service. He wants you. How far are you willing to go? Flip back to the book of Romans. Back to our definition of true success.